Have you been waiting long?
It's fine. Can work while I wait. So
Cool.
worked out
Well,
just
nice to
fine.
meet you, Jared.
Likewise.
Thanks for doing this. So before we get going, introduce yourself, explain 2% for conservation, and we'll get going.
Yeah. What's the time frame that you're wanting to go for?
However long you want to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am a little limited on energy, unfortunately, just because
Okay, no worries.
the docs have me on right now.
Well, at least you're up and around and you're moving, but
I had to fight for that. My mom flew in last night to help take care of the kids while this is all going on. So
that's cool.
we'll see. We'll see how
Okay.
long.
Well, we'll do what we can do, and if not,
All right.
we'll pick up another time.
All right. Sounds good. So just an intro.
Yeah. Just give an intro on yourself and
All
your group and everything.
Okay. Well, I'm Jared Frazier. I'm the executive director of 2% for Conservation. We're a 501c3, that means nonprofit here in the U.S. Organization. Our mission is to ensure the future of hunting and angling by creating an alliance of businesses and individuals that give their time and dollars to fish and wildlife conservation. And our main program is certifying businesses and individuals for giving 1% of their time and 1% of their dollars to conservation work.
Now, is by time you mean like volunteering for certain like river cleanup or
it could be anything. Yeah, okay. We're very laissez-faire, very hands off with where folks give. So on the time side, how you give that time is entirely up to you. It could be doing a river cleanup. It could be writing letters to your local county board on different things. If they're paving paradise to put up parking lots and stuff, it could be that. It could be, we had business members fly to DC to meet with the Department of the Interior a few years back with the Wild Sheep Foundation on behalf of wild sheep, and on, being more, smarter with grazing allotments for the sake of wild sheep and disease transfers. So, it can be anything, but really it's meant to scale for the person. And on the dollar side, one really important thing about us is we don't touch those dollars. No one sends us 1% of their dollars, to hit that amount. We certify that a business or an individual has done that. So you choose where you give your dollars, or services or products. There's a lot of things that we count on the dollar side that the IRS doesn't count, or in other countries they don't, put on tax paperwork that we would count, like, use of your podcast as a service to get the word out. Or if someone's got product that they make, donating that product to banquets, or if they're a accountant, donating their accounting services to a conservation group. Really, the sky's the limit, and we want it to fit what the person does and has the capacity for, but ultimately also what they're passionate about.
I guess I was a little, not really ignorant, just misinformed, because I always thought environmentalism and conservationists, like they're the same thing, but really they're not. Where, and I actually had to look it up because I was kind of confused. Environmentalists are concerned with, like, say a frog in a certain area is going to be wiped out because they want to build something. They're more concerned with the environmental impact, where conservation is how the land is used. Or
it's sides of a coin, really. They're often really tied together. So let's take, for example, something that's pressing and happening right now. We used to have caribou in the lower 48 here in the States. We had, back in 2010, I actually got to see one in Idaho. I did not know that there were caribou in Idaho, and I thought I was looking at a really sick elk. I knew what caribou looked like. I'm a hunter, I know what they look like, but I thought I was looking at a sick elk. Well, 3 years ago, they were extirpated. They're gone. They're not here anymore. And a lot of the work that was being done to try to keep their population here was being thrown up. People were saying folks are being environmentalists, and a lot of things were moving them out. A lot of logging practices were moving them out. They need a very specific type of lichen to be able to live there. And that old growth forest was being logged out. And then snowmobilers in the winter were pushing them out of their sanctuary areas where they actually calve in the winter. And snowmobilers were, they don't know. They're riding along. They see something brown. They think it's, a deer or an elk. Didn't realize they just kicked the caribou out of the one spot that the mountain lions, wolves, and cars couldn't get them. And so we lost them. They're gone. This last year, back in December of 2019, we got a call from some Canadian members up there saying, hey, we need some emergency funds. The government fell through. They couldn't get us the funds for a breeding pen, or not breeding pen, but a calving pen for these cow caribou to have their babies and be protected from, any kind of interaction from people or four-legged predators. And 2% members raised money to do that really quick. And get that pen up, and now that herd, they had their babies, and that herd's being able to grow. But we almost lost again the southernmost herd of caribou in the world. And on one side, you could look at it and go, well, that looks like environmentalism, saying I can't do this or that. But really, conservation is often that. Conservation is so often saying either no, you can't do that, or no, let's do it this different way. There's a reason why our hunting seasons are during a certain time of year. It's to get the most animals still reproducing while also the highest harvest of the resource. So it's very much a two-sided coin. When we start getting conservationist versus environmentalist kind of ideas, that's when the marketing folks at different interest groups are making their money.
Like lobbyists, or lobbyists in Washington and everything would come in. Now, for example, is that a lot like how the public lands were being open to mining and gas and oil drilling? Is that would be more environmentalists as far as like resisting that? But we as hunters and conservationists, that also affects us because, you got these big machines coming in, and the land that we're going to use to hunt on, now we got an oil rig somewhere.
There are. So, and these are areas that, again, the money is to be made in the conflict, and there are people making bank on the conflict.
Of course.
So as hunters and anglers, as conservationists, and those who are conservationists that don't hunt or fish, maybe they're helping put, rehabilitate habitat areas and stuff like that benefit those of us who do hunt and fish. We actually have several members, they don't hunt or fish themselves, but they've really helped rehabilitate hunting and fishing areas. When you look at things like that, like different pipelines, or you think of like the Pebble Mine, if people have heard about that up in Bristol Bay, when there's a big hullabaloo, when hunters and anglers are making a lot of noise saying, we don't want this, there's a real good reason. With the Pebble Mine, for example, it's at the headwaters of the biggest salmon fishery in the world. And you have one mistake happen there, and you knock out Alaska's, their whole fishing industry on both commercial and, recreational, like you or I would be able to go up to do. It's gone, and you're not getting it back for generations, kind of thing. Just recently, there was a big coal mine permit opened up in Canada, and a bunch of our Canadian members started calling us saying, hey, what can you guys do about this? We're like, well, we're American, so we're a little, we're a little limited on that, but where they're putting it is right in a huge hunting and fishing paradise is where they want to put it, because their government decided that they wanted to make their money via extraction versus recreation. And so there's things like that. As far as 2% is concerned, though, there's a reason why our logo is purple. Conservation should be nonpartisan. It should be nonpartisan, and the things that the conservation bills that exist in government should be bipartisan. These resources that we all want to use, we all have to drive cars to get around for the most part. The devices you and I are using right now have precious minerals that if people saw how they're mined in other parts of the world and the ecosystems that they just destroyed to get these precious minerals, like in Indonesia and parts of Africa, we'd be appalled, and rightly so. So really, with a conservationist mindset, you're looking for how do I not do so much damage? And how do I filter through the politics and look at the things that I love and fight for the things that I love and that I hope other generations get to have as good or better than I. There's a lot of fights about, clean water rules and stuff here in the States over the last 4 years with changing over. The reason why those were written was there was a river in Ohio that started on fire in the 70s,
Yep.
And if you've ever been in a major city and tried to go for a swim, dodge the diapers. So, there's policy and stuff like that it's good to be informed of. And it comes down to, for me personally, a decision of what's most important to me, my affiliation with a club or party, or this passion, this life passion of mine, the thing that makes me feel alive. And I think a lot of hunters, especially anglers, have had to deal with it longer, because when your river's buggered up, your fishing's gone like right away, or when a plant starts dumping into a lake, your fishing's gone right away. With hunting, it takes a little bit longer for the negative effects to be seen, and hunters are starting to wise up to those things. But as far as
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
As far as with 2%, we don't push policy. Very rarely will we make any noise about policy unless some of our business members have, like a group of them, have asked for us to, or if it's something that's a win-win-win on all fronts. We're not anti-industry. We are pro-creative and well-regulated for the sake of the resources industry. But we, again, like if you look on our website, it's all about personal responsibility, taking personal initiative with your business or as an individual to give back of what you have to help take care of the resource, and less about fighting what other people might be wanting to do to the resource.
So us as individuals, hunters and anglers, groups like Trout Unlimited or Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, National Wild Turkey Federation, those are where we could be a member of that and organize a planting of trees or cleaning up some area, and that would be considered. So I guess I'm trying to say, if we got involved that way, and then how would we communicate that we're doing that 1% as far as on the work end goes?
Yeah. So for individuals, it's free to become a member. We want folks to be able to spend, instead of spending $35 with us for a membership, we'd rather you go buy that Turkey Federation membership, right? Because then you're getting their magazines, you're getting their emails of what's going on in habitat areas near you. Same goes for your Pheasants Forever, your Trout Unlimiteds, your Bonefish Tarpon Trust. I mean, you name a species, almost any, species in North America, there's an organization around it, and they likely have a chapter somewhere nearby. Volunteering with them could be anything from showing up on a project that they already have, or reaching out to, via their website saying, hey, what do you have, going on? We noticed in 2018 that there were still a lot of gaps, especially as these organizations have gotten bigger. It's been more difficult for the private individual or business to find an immediate project for them to get involved in. So we started something internally called our committee program. And on our website, it's under programs. It's committee directory is what you'd click on. And there's a map there. Each one of those pins is a person who has been vetted as a good contact point for being able to get boots on the ground work done. So that you can put a literal pin on the map in your house or at your business of where you went and volunteered. And they're titled volunteers, meaning they could be like a board member or committee member or an employee of different conservation groups, or they're the person who has, the world's biggest Rolodex of all those contacts in like a metro area or something like that. So that you can at least get the ball rolling, because a lot of these projects, like let's say you want to go do some trail maintenance on state land, county land, national forest land, you go out there with a pickaxe, you're going to get in trouble. You have to, get permission before you go and make adjustments and stuff like that, which they are so often just very, very excited for you to come and help, because they're wildly underfunded. Because for as good as our funding mechanisms are with the Pittman Robertson, Dinkle Johnson excise taxes here in the States, it's still a drop in the bucket compared to the actual need out there, especially after 2020 with so many people going outside and abusing the hell out of public lands. So if someone wants to find a way to give back their time, and are having a hard time, don't know of anyone in their area, you hop on Facebook or whatever, and you're not finding a chapter for whatever the species, or if it's public or private land conservation issues that you're interested in, you go to our committee directory and they can get you squared away pretty quick.
And then as far as businesses go, like any business can literally contact you and say, hey, we want to get involved, and then donate their time and money. And so the money, the 1% is like 1% of their profits, or how?
Their gross sales.
Okay.
Their gross sales. So, and that opens it up to businesses that are just in their first year of existence too. We have a small percentage. It's about a quarter of the businesses that are certified with us right now, and we're approaching the 100 business member mark. Despite 2020, we actually doubled in size in 2020 as far as business membership. People were giving back in a huge way throughout the year. But it's your gross sales, so that if it's in your first year of business, it's attainable, so that you can make it a part of your business model from day one. When you first write up that first budget, when you're starting your startup up, you can put in there that 1% of your gross sales is going to go to conservation causes. And what that looks like can, again, be direct dollars. It could be a check that you send in, which, again, if you're a startup business, that's hard. You need those dollars for, your business right away. So it could also be donating product. It could be donating services. Or if you do, like, let's say a percentage off. If you've ever been to a big bank, like a fundraising banquet, there's all that stuff up there for the auctions and the raffles. A lot of that was donated at like 40 or 50% off. We would count that 40 or 50% off of MSRP. So that hitting that 1% of gross sales is easy for a business.
So say, fingers crossed, my podcast gets huge, Rogan-ish, Joe Rogan style,
Spotify signs you. Yeah.
Now I could take the money that I'm grossing and set aside 1%, and then that would be something, as far as a business, I could donate to your organization. Is that?
You wouldn't donate it to us. You would donate it to the causes you care about. So
okay.
Yeah, it could be a local rod and gun club and their youth education programs. We've got a certified piano repair company in Alabama. We've got a certified recording artist, real estate. The business doesn't matter, but the places that they give to are just as diverse as the types of businesses. Some of them, they give just directly to the local school's outdoor education program to make sure that kids in their local school get to go to an outdoor education center and learn, that there are stars in the sky. Because if they don't know about the outdoors, they're not going to care about them when they're older. So we count anything where you're giving back towards educating folks on the outdoors, advocacy for conservation, direct on the ground conservation work, which is the real sexy stuff, the collars for goats and the counting the fish and all that. We count that. And then also anywhere where you're enhancing or promoting access to the outdoors for folks too. Because again, if they don't have somewhere to go, they're not going to care. And folks who live in states where you have limited access, or where the outdoors aren't part of the regular, conversation, what it's like when you go to a public meeting about something and no one gives a rip. They just want the new movie theater so that they can go to 2 movies a year instead of having that marshland there where they could be waterfowl hunting. So all those areas we're very loose on, but we can also help businesses too. If they need help finding places to give, we can help you find them. We won't tell you where to give, but we can give you a little menu and get the ball rolling on having it be a natural, holistic part of your business.
That's good to know. Because like I said, fingers crossed. So I'll look down in the future for that one. But it's funny. I was also thinking today, is as a hunter and someone who loves the outdoors, my main focus is the hunt and getting ready for the hunt. And then I thought, I'm going to be talking to him about conservation, and I can only speak for myself, and I'm probably sure I'm not alone, that I'd never really thought about being involved in conservation, because that's a big part. I'm using this land, I'm hunting its resources, but I never really thought, I'm part of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and National Wild Turkey Federation, but I haven't really more than anything, I just pay and get the, like you said, get the magazine and the stickers and everything, but I haven't really been involved. And I've been looking at my life like that's why I joined the military. Like I wasn't given, I felt I hadn't given enough of myself to others. And that's why I'm looking at it now as I started thinking about our podcast today is like, I need to do a little bit more for what I'm involved in besides just the hunting aspect of it and just buying my tag and that's it. So you've got me thinking, and then listen to you speak and like I said, maybe somewhere down the line, as far as this goes, I can set aside money for it. But yeah, I think more people should be involved, especially if you are a hunter or an angler, because like I said, you're using the land, you're using the resources that it's giving you to enjoy it. So, but as far as, oh, go ahead.
We have a little tagline, and it's that the title conservationist shouldn't be a participation trophy. And for decades, hunters have paid a lion's share, not necessarily the lion's share, because money for conservation does come from lots of places. Department of Transportation, Department of Defense, like they're all ending up paying for conservation in the U.S. in a lot of ways. But as far as private individuals, we're the only ones taking on an excise tax. And if for those who aren't familiar, there's the Pittman-Robertson, which was started in the dirty 30s, which is an 11% excise tax on all hunting licenses, firearms, ammunition, and archery equipment. And that goes directly into the states. It's not allowed to be dispersed into any other, kind of shell fund or anything like that by Congress. It goes straight to the states for wildlife management. And then there was the Dingell-Johnson Act, which came along a couple decades later, and that was on the angling side for fishing equipment, fishing licenses. So anglers, started to say, we are the true conservationists and whatnot. And the reality is paying a tax doesn't make you special. In my opinion, that would mean, if paying a tax on my equipment and my licenses makes me, the end all of what a conservationist could be, well, then I might as well also be I should be counted as a firefighter and a police officer and an elementary school teacher and all the other things that my home's taxes go to.
Right.
It's just not enough. And part of why I'm passionate about that and why our organization is about saying, hey, paying the tax ain't enough. We're one of the few countries that has that tax. For one, Canada has been doing their conservation work by private donation. Their average hunter gives way more to conservation than hunters do here in the States, even though they don't pay an excise tax. And if you were to include that, take that 11% out, they would still be giving per hunter and angler more back to the resource than Americans do. And those stats are pretty easy to find online with the Google and whatnot. But the real issue is that if it had been enough money to take care of the resource and enough time to take care of the resource, boots on the ground, folks pulling fence, planting trees, rehabilitating areas that are no longer usable, things like that. If it had been enough, we would not have a couple thousand wildlife conservation organizations here in the States working specifically on those things. And in 2020, we saw what it looked like when those organizations didn't get to operate because they didn't get to have their banquets. Almost a third of all conservation dollars that are raised in the U.S. are raised at banquets between the months of February and May. And that's exactly when shutdown happened. Yeah. So all that money that would go to match the dollars that come from Pittman-Robertson, Dingell-Johnson, and whatnot did not come in, or a good chunk of it did not. Some of it still did because they did online stuff, but a lot of it didn't. And now we've got some pretty big habitat projects out there that have no money. And part of why we included the time aspect is honestly to just save more money too. You can pay a contractor or a volunteer who owns a skid steer can come out and do it. And anyone who works in contracting or government contracts knows, the price difference between having someone come out and do it and paying, minimum $150 an hour to have a skid steer pull out conifers where they're encroaching on mule deer habitat. So the idea that hunters, just by existing, have done enough and are deserving of the title of true conservationist is just factually bunk. It's valuable. We've done valuable things. And if hunters and the tag system and the taxes hadn't existed, we'd be up a creek and worse than maybe any other country, out there, save China and a few others that really don't seem to treat wildlife with that much of a priority. Thinking of 2020, we got into where we are partly because of how that country manages their wildlife. And I use big air quotes for wildlife because
we don't even know what's going on over there.
Well, the biologists on the ground do, and it's
yeah, they do, but
it's like Texas on steroids.
yeah, exactly.
They've privatized so much. Or the government has not privatized, but isolated wildlife so much and domesticated it so much. It's not really wild anymore. And it's, whoever can pay the most is the one who gets to be involved, and there's no money to take care of anything. So we have a good program with Pittman Robertson, Dingle Johnson. Let's not do away with that. But as hunters going out who know the resource, who know the habitat areas, the anglers who know the rivers, if there's a new log in the river, the average angler knows it, whereas general public, they're not keeping track of those kind of things. When a hunter's driving down the road, we're noticing, whoa, look at that duck, look, did you see that buck down in that thicket? We just see things differently. If we just put in 1% of our time, 21 hours a year, and 1% of our income, which again could be buying memberships, it could be, spending money on online raffles and auctions with conservation groups, or straight up donating, or just buying their t-shirts helps them out too, or their license plates or whatever. If we go that just little extra bit en masse and can convince our friends who don't hunt, who don't fish, or who are a bit more nominal in the amount that they do, to just do that little bit more, our landscapes are going to be more than taken care of. But right now, it's the exact opposite.
And yeah, like you said, with the pandemic and more people, they said we're going outdoors this year, especially on public lands. I was reading because I went to University of Colorado, so I always check on the daily camera and stuff in Boulder. And there's a mountain somewhere, some big hiking area was just like overwhelmed this year by human footprints, human traffic, and just trash. And I guess people are going to taking dumps all over up there and stuff. And, and no one cleaned it up. It wasn't cleaned up. And so they said it was all due to the fact that just the more people went outside, which is great. But then you get this end result that's not being taken care of. And like you said, hunters kind of think just because we're being taxed, okay, well, that takes care of everything. Same with public land. Everyone's like, oh, I'm a public landowner because I pay my taxes. But, they figured it out. It's like $1 or something you're really paying for all the thousands, millions of acres of public land. And yet, you use it, but what are you doing for it?
Right.
What else are you doing besides using that land? You really got me thinking prior to our podcast is how much more I need to be involved, because I said I just buy my tags usually, and I and get ready for the hunting season. Never really gave much thought to, taking care of what I'm using.
Yeah. This year, here in Montana, we just got blown out. Hunting season aside, which was an absolute gong show. I've never seen. I saw in an area where the gal who runs the gas station, she said she normally sees like 10 trucks a day, over 100 before noon. All from everywhere. So tag sales were great. So there's some money coming in from that here in the state, but everything was just trashed. And early, right after shutdown kind of loosened up in June, July, one of our business members here in Montana, Dark Mountain, they make exercise supplements. They have a bunch of ambassadors across the state, in different gyms and stuff, and hunters and whatnot. They called them all together and they said, hey, we've got a habitat area. We normally mule deer hunt, and we're willing to show it to you only because of what has just happened, if you're willing to come out and clean it. And they ended up moving several tons of trash from people who had driven up here and squatted for 2 months during lockdown from who knows where. When I tried to take my family camping, every campground was full. People were entrenched. Rangers were getting threatened. There was trash everywhere. We have these lakes that have really. I'm originally from northern Wisconsin, so I'm partial to loons. I grew up listening to loons as a kid.
Love
Here
it,
in
yeah.
Montana, they're pretty rare. And this lake has loons. Well, if you know anything about loons, they nest right on the edge of the water, just right on the edge. And so big waves will knock their eggs out, and then they don't reproduce. And loons mate for life, typically mate for life. So you just lost a year. And if they go out chasing it and a trout takes them, which in that lake the trout are big enough to take on a loon, you've got a real problem. So we go out there and there's folks just driving their jet boats around like crazy. And I knew right away. I mean, that time of year, you should be seeing baby loons, going around with their folks around the lake, and not a single one to be seen, where normally every year we see them. So education's a big, big part of it. And living out the 2% standard in your personal life is an easy, non-combative way to start. If you go and tell someone, hey, go pick up all your shit, they don't respond well to it. Odds are they'll probably shoot that sign with a gun they borrowed from someone somewhere. We put up like don't litter signs, and there's bullet holes through them like immediately, even here in the Bozeman area. But if you go out and you've got on your vehicle, 2% for conservation certified, if you've got the t-shirts, the hats and stuff, or if you're just putting it on your social media of, hey, I went out, scouted my deer spot today, and I picked up this trash that must have blown in from somewhere. Taking part like that actually starts to make a real snowball impact. When people don't really care about opinions, they care about what you do. So if you lead by example in that way, instead of what hunters have done for so long, which is I've done enough, we have a very different culture to look forward to. It just takes some personal initiative and going beyond the status quo. And thankfully, I think a lot of folks are starting to catch on to that. You're starting to see more of it on social media, a lot of collaborative cleanups and stuff like that. In August, we were supposed to have our Bozeman Conservation Convention, where we bring in the duck people to talk to the sheep people, to talk to the fish people, to talk to they never all get to meet in one room typically. So we were supposed to have that, had to cancel it because we were still on lockdown. So we converted it over to what we called our Community Conservation Day. And we had different business members, providing prizes and stuff of like gift cards for their gear. There were actual cash bounties for who could bring in the most trash in a day, stuff like that. And wherever people were, wherever they lived, they could take part in it. And if you weren't allowed in your public places, because some spots were still under such lockdown, especially for our European members, you could also spend that time online advocating for the causes you care about, and then just share a screenshot of that. Or if you didn't, if you wanted to take it a step further, sharing that you bought memberships to your favorite organizations, to your 3 best buddies, or to organizations, for your enemies, signing your business competitors up for memberships to nonprofits and whatnot. We had a big day full of that, all over the world, and it had over 2 million impressions, which I think is a pretty positive impact. But it's going to take stuff like that on the regular if we're going to get the general public educated on what our ecosystems need. Because if we don't, we can kiss hunting goodbye and angling goodbye simply from the resource being trampled, not by litigation shutting it down.
Yeah, there's nothing more disheartening when you're out in the mountains, far enough away from any major travel areas and people, and you find those mylar balloons. And you're just like,
yeah.
And the effect of them, and then people always just seem to launch those, and they don't realize they're ending up deflating and ended up somewhere just making trash. Yeah. And that's like I find those things all the time. All over the place.
We had some individual members working on a study where they were doing high country trout fishing. So up here we've got some mountain lakes, up around 10,000 feet. They're hard to get to. Our mountains aren't as high as Colorado, but they are just nasty, nasty steep because we're right on a shelf. And the study they were doing was microplastics in the trout. So they're, you're in these high alpine areas where it is a bugger getting in there. I mean, a full day to get to that lake. And they're catching these trout and they're opening up their guts and they're looking through. They got plastic in them. And I mean, it's obvious.
Now I can see in an urban area where houses, where water runs into from the sewer or drainage into a river or something, where they always find those microplastics, the
little
really
beads
that
and stuff.
Yeah. They're finding them that high up. Holy
they're finding them not just in their gut, but because of how their digestive tracts work, it actually goes into their flesh, which means you could go up, you could catch a trout here in Montana at 10,000 feet. There will be plastic in its meat.
How is it getting up that high? Is it through the rain or wind or?
It can blow. It blows around. So it can blow up there. They're also seeing that it's being dropped by birds as well. So birds will go to a landfill, eat a bunch of stuff, fly up high, and you're not going to get rid of the birds, right? So there's wind doing it. There's birds. There's all kinds of things. But then also, someone goes up there on a hike and they're using a plastic one-use water bottle, and they crumple it up. They put it in their pack. They think it was in there. It falls out, and now it's in there in that churning water. Now it's in there again. So there's all these little things that, like, it feels like a lot to keep track of. But I don't think. I mean, you just finished a workout. I don't think you want to be eating plastic.
No.
I'm
sure I am sometime.
Me too. Same goes for, the conversations around lead or non-lead. I struggled hard this year shooting non-lead bullets. My gun does not like non-lead bullets. So I burned through way more money than I was, than I wanted to, trying to get it to shoot accurately with straight copper. But when you look at the x-rays of the deer, that ones that have been shot with lead bullets, even the ones that have great mass retention, there's still lead all over in there. And I know I ate a ton of lead BBs as a kid, from pheasant and turkey and stuff like that. So who knows what I could have been capable of, if I hadn't, or what's waiting for me when I get older. But there's simple things like that. I don't want to say it's easy, because like I just said, I tried to make the switch to straight copper this year, and it was a struggle bus. Big time. But, when those carcasses get left out there, now we've got golden eagles dying, and it's in the local paper. And what did it die from? Lead poisoning. How'd they get lead poisoning? Hunters. What do you think the local community thinks about hunters at that point? When you've got a golden eagle or a bald eagle, which is the majority of them that are being killed by it. And then you think about your kids, you bring home what's supposed to be wild, organic, the healthiest of meat, but it's laced with lead. So there's all those little things. There are organizations that tackle all of that. 2%, we support the work they do, but really we're meant to be a catalyst for people in their personal lives and in their businesses to at least have a starting point. 1% of your time, 1% of your dollars. If we were to go smaller than 1%, that gets, a 0.5% is kind of pathetic, sounding, but something attainable so that people have a target to shoot for, to start at, and move up from there. This year we launched 2% Plus. We're slowly pivoting some of our businesses that give much more over to that. It's being updated on our website soon as we've got a little bit more bandwidth. But it's for businesses that give at least 5% of their gross sales and have 1 out of every 5 employees giving 1% of their time to conservation, to acknowledge those who are going way above and beyond our baseline standard, our starting point.
And you said 1% is about 21 hours a year. Is that what you said?
Yes.
So think about this, whoever happens to be listening to this podcast. The amount of time in a day you spend on your phone could be close to 21 hours. And if you just put your phone down for 1 hour or 5 minutes just to do something, pick up a piece of trash, something that's going to benefit. I mean, you can
sharing your favorite conservation group's posts. I mean, people
have time, but people have way too much time, to be honest with you. the way the people spend their time on social media. So like you said, yeah, they can do that. And then, it'd be good for them to get off their phones though, and do something outside, because being outside is great. And, we got to take more advantage of what we're using and give back. It's, it's a time in your life, I guess as you get older, you realize, I need to do more and just take. It's time to start giving back. So yeah, I've really seriously, I've been reflecting on this since I've been anticipating this podcast. It's like, that's when I started looking at the whole conservationist, environmentalist type deal, and understanding the difference. And then, like you said, as hunters, we buy our tags, we give our taxes, and most of them are like, hey, I'm doing something, but really, and a lot are getting involved, but
oh yeah,
obviously all of us could do more.
Yeah, there's more than ever before, getting involved at a personal level, which has been a phenomenal trend to get to, be a part of. Most of the big conservation groups, that are species specific and whatnot, are seeing member growth. Most of them. Some of them, that focus on hunts that you have to be making high six figures annually or higher, they're seeing a drop off because millennials can't afford it. But that's why we chose, a percentage. We have certified business. So one of the certified businesses that we can't put up on our website is a couple babysitters in Southern Indiana, just outside of Fort Wayne. They're minors, so we can't put them, they're teenagers, but they have it on their, babysitter business cards that they're 2% certified. And once they turn 18, we'll see what they do with their lives. They probably will be going off to school, won't be babysitting anymore. But if they can do it, your average construction company can do it. If you run a construction company, or like in my family, it's plumbing and heating. My folks, they have a over 100-year-old plumbing and heating business. If you're going to banquets and whatnot, and buying tables for your teams, like here in the Bozeman area, when RMEF has a banquet, it's like a rush between all the electricians and the concrete guys who can buy a table, for their guys. And if you hit your sales numbers, then you get to go to the banquet. Every dollar that you spend there, every time that your business goes and gives back, even in a way that is good internal marketing for your employees, we count towards that. And you should be able to wear that as a badge of pride in your community, so that on your service truck or on your storefront, there's a sticker that says, we give back, 2% for conservation certified. And that on your website, that there is a page about why you give back to the local ecosystems, why it's important to your employees. Your employees love to hunt, so we give back to these groups because it's something that they're passionate about. It's a good employee retention tool. And then when you have your invoices, if you're providing a service or, sales, and you have your invoice that goes out to them, your packing slips, there's a little thing on there so that when they see, the dollar amount, the pain point, there's also a little thing down there that says 1% of all of our gross sales goes back. And we also donate 1% of our time to conservation work. We help all of our business members put those things into place at time scales that work for them. And we also, we do have to keep the lights on, pay for, server time and stuff like that. So we do have dues. We modeled them after the Better Business Bureau and then scaled them back. We want folks to be able to give back and not have the certification be an impetus to them being able to do that. Or an impediment. Sorry.
So I'm working on getting my real estate license, and then basically I'll be self-employed. So I could join your organization and then take as my annual gross sales. I could take 1% of that, and that would be my donation to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We have two certified real estate. Well, we have one certified real estate agent right now as a business. Here in the States, Sarah Day out of here in Bozeman, she donates to the local land trust. That she also volunteers her time with as well. She's in real estate. Land trusts work in real estate. It's a natural fit for her. Up in Canada, we haven't announced her certification yet, but we have another real estate agent, private real estate agent, registered with, a much larger company that she, is technically contracting through. but she will be announced soon. Same thing. She's just outside Vancouver. And then in Oregon, we have an entire real estate agency that we have yet to announce their certification as well. But he's got his whole agency certified for giving back. In the case of the one in Vancouver and the one in Oregon, they were in their first year. So when you first sign on with us, we don't make you go back. First of all, we don't make you wait to be in existence for a full year. We let you sign on and commit right away, whether or not you just started or have been around for 100 years. When you first sign on with us with the application packet, which can be found under business certification on our website, you can put down where you are committing to the coming year. And we know that that will change. Like last year, over half of our businesses changed where they were giving and how much they were giving. It was a weird year, but it's an initial commitment, and that starts the ball rolling then on us being in contact with you. If you're running into hiccups with where you're giving, we can help mediate. It doesn't happen often. Usually it's very painless, giving back to most organizations, especially if they're local. But we can help you over the course of the year. And then at the end of the year, all we require is one of two things: either a note from your CPA saying where you gave and how much your gross sales was coming in, so that we can see the verses, and then we go and we check on that on our own. Or we get the other option, which is the one we don't prefer, which is tax forms. And actually we can only accept those in the States. We can't look at tax forms from other countries, from our members in Scotland and Australia and Canada. We prefer the CPA note. It has to be a third-party financial entity that writes it up. If you don't have a CPA, you can write it up yourself. You just have to take it to your bank, have it notarized. And then we check it. So it's meant to be super, super simple, so that you can focus on your business and enjoy giving back and not have the certification be a headache to maintain.
I'm going to have to contact you offline, because I'll actually going to be your neighbor. I'm going to be I'll be moving to Livingston. And Sarah Day, you said her name was?
Sarah Day, yeah.
Okay, because I'm going to get my license here, and then I'm going to get my license for Montana as well. And then I'll the Bozeman area I'm looking at, but I want to live in Livingston. It's a little farther, but it's smaller, and I need some space to free my mind, because here in Texas it's getting too crowded, and I need to get away from people. But yeah, I'll contact you and see if I can get her contact information and pick her brain about her involvement, and maybe see if I can get involved with her or something.
Be awesome.
Yeah.
When you move to Livingston, just so you know, that the town slogan is, it's a drinking town with a windy problem.
Yeah, there's actually I'm gonna have her on. Her name's Margie, and her handle is Wild. It's an odd spelling of Wild, like WY, but she's from Livingston. She's a chef, and she's coming on my podcast. And she posted a picture this morning of elk, and it's something. The caption was something about Livingston, and so I sent her a message. And then so we've been going back and forth, and she said, "I hope you like the wind." So I grew up in upstate New York, and the winters there are horrible.
That's a different bone-killing cold.
Yeah, and it gets you throw in the cold and the wind and the humidity. It's the wind chill. So I'm used to the cold, but she said, "I hope you like the wind." So I just like the thought of having open space and being back in the mountains. That's the one thing that
living there, you will be a 20-minute drive almost all year round from being able to see just about every big game species in Montana. I've seen moose in Livingston, downtown by the river. I've seen there's pronghorn right outside. One of the biggest elk herds around is just south of town. It's actually where I shot my first elk was there. Fun fact with that, Paradise Valley, which is just south of Livingston. This is a cool conservation story. It really ties with what we've been talking about. Back in the 70s, there was a plan to start damming the Yellowstone River, basically from Yellowstone, just out north of Yellowstone in Paradise Valley, just right there at Livingston, and then dam it all the way to the state border, kind of following I-90 as it goes out. And their goal was to turn it into a similar smelting area, an industry area. They were going to call it like the new Appalachia, which, if you've kept track of how that region of the country is going, we're real glad that didn't happen out here, because those industries are, dead.
Yep.
But they were going to dam it. And the governor had Montana's got phenomenal history of government corruption. I mean, we had the senator who went to DC and would drop bags of gold in Congress in front of people as soon as they would vote in the direction he wanted them to. Like, there are laws made because of the people here. So the governor was totally in on it. Everyone knew the governor was in on it. Well, this guy named Jim Posowitz, he was head of Montana Fish and Game at the time. He's since passed this last year. He was just a phenomenal guy. He wrote the book Beyond Fair Chase. If you ever read that, it's part of Hunter's Ed requirements in 27 states now. But he was head of our Fish and Game at the time. He put a crew together to try to stop this, to show that the Paradise Valley was too great of a resource for both hunting and angling for the state to dam it and turn it basically into one big sluice lake, like a swampy lake. And he was having a hard time getting support for it, because Montana just doesn't have much population to counteract when big industry decides it wants to come and move in. And all the ranchers were like, we don't want this going in. We have livelihoods. We're raising cattle here. The timber companies were like, you're going to shut us down too. They're all these different things, but the governor, he's corrupt. He's got what he's got going on. So Paz goes and reaches out to a friend who knows a guy at a distillery in, I want to say, Kentucky or Tennessee. And they came up with a bourbon called Yellowstone Gold. And they flew out like Sports Illustrated and Time Magazine. And it was either Playboy or Hustler for this big press thing. And Paz, to the day he died, he still joked he never got to see that edition. He looked for every edition of Hustler that the article was in, but never was able to find it. But they had this huge press thing for this release of Yellowstone Gold bourbon. And it made such big headlines, all the major funders backed out. And they backed out of damming it. Well, the spot where I shot my first elk would have been below water if they had put that dam in. And one of the biggest elk herds in the country would be gone if they had put that dam in. Some of the best upland, I got to be careful what I give away here, because locals will get real mad, but a lot of cool things that you're about to live right next to, that whole thing would have been underwater. And now we have this gorgeous resource. We also avoided the economic calamity of trying to put up mills and stuff that ultimately would have been shipped overseas anyway by governments that were yet to come. But that story was told last year by the winning entry of our Conservation Media Award. Randy Newberg's crew with Fresh Tracks TV, they put a film together called The Dam That Never Was. And they managed to get old Paz in a boat while he was still able to float the area and tell the story. It's absolutely gorgeous. There's a reason why it's called Paradise Valley. But that was the winning entry of our Conservation Media Awards last year. And actually, timing-wise, on Monday, we open up the 2021 entries for folks to nominate podcasts, films, articles, and stuff about conservation. So it's more elevated in the public eye and less, whack 'em, stack 'em, kill porn that we, frankly, I mean, I've seen thousands of deer die with Luminok on TV. I want to know what's going on the ground for wildlife to make sure my kids and my grandkids have something to hunt. So if folks want to check that out, those are on our website as well. They can actually watch the films right there on the Conservation Media Award page. And if there's media that they want to nominate to be uplifted, to tell stories like this so that they're not forgotten, so that we know who went. I mean, Paz basically lost his job. Everyone in that crew was fired by the governor. But I got to shoot my first elk somewhere that would have been underwater over 30 years, about 40 years later. So stuff like that, those little impacts, those little fights that we take, for the things that we love, you never know where they're going to pay out down the line for those that come after us.
I'm supposed to be interviewing we've spoken on the phone. We communicated by email, and then we spoke on the phone about it. She works for the state of Montana as a wildlife biologist, and she's going to come on and talk about the wolves, because I know that's a big deal with hunters, how they impact
on the hunter. Yeah.
How they impact elk herds. And so she's really knowledgeable, man. She was telling me all these different things, predator, prey, and yeah. So she's supposed to come on, and she was supposed there's a guy, I guess he's like the bear guy for the state of Montana, wildlife biologist. She said she'll talk to him, and because I want to find out about the, like, as far as grizzlies and black bears, and how they're part of the ecosystem. And then I've got the Pennsylvania lead biologist for their elk management, how they managed to get that elk herd to like where they can hunt them now. And my neighbor's kid back home shot a monster. First time ever. Never hunted deer, elk. His grandfather won a raffle and gave him it, and he ends up shooting this monster bull elk in Pennsylvania. So yeah.
So I've got a photo of my three greats grandma up in Boulder Junction, Wisconsin, which is I mean, if you're looking at Wisconsin, I'm trying to do this so it's the right direction. You got the little thumb green base here. It's way up by, the UP. And it's from an old logging camp, and she's holding up a bull elk, a raghorn. And that had been shot just outside the logging camp. And this was like in the 1880s. And I have a photo of it. It's tucked away. I won't make you wait while I go and dig for it. But then they were gone, right? Well, when I was about 9 years old, I'm sitting in the family hunting cabin, which cabin is a strong word for what this building was, as far as, four walls and how much wind could blow through those four walls. There was a copy of, I think it was either Field and Stream or some outdoor magazine, and it talked about how the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation was transplanting some elk into northern Wisconsin. I remember my dad saying, hey, when you're my age, you might get to hunt them. Well, 2 years ago, they had the first elk hunt in Wisconsin in 100 years. But it took people giving their dollars to the organization to make it happen. It took landowners living there being willing to have elk on their property, adjacent to deal with them, adjacent to the national forest where they got put on. But it also took a ton of volunteer hours. So they were transplanting them in the 90s. And over those years, volunteers would go out in the spring and they do what are called calf surveys. You do a grid search through the woods, and you are looking under every log, every nick and cranny. And if you know the North Woods of Wisconsin, they're just thick, and there's dead old growth everywhere. And they go through them and they count them to see what the retention was, how many survived the winter. And there are folks who helped move those first elk, helped on the first 20 years of surveys that were dead and gone before the tag was ever opened. But they gave their time, they gave their dollars, and now people are hunting elk in Wisconsin for the first time in 100 years. And it's just phenomenal.
The reintroduction of elk and I mean, of course, they're not native, a lot of them, like Pennsylvania. It should be the eastern elk, but at least their elk are back there. I think it was I think the last eastern elk was shot in New Hampshire, like the 1920s or 30s. And then that was it. Isn't it amazing? I had a guy, his name's Greg McHale, and he's has a TV show in Canada called, well, it's all over, but it's called Greg McHale's Wild Yukon. And we were talking, and I was watching some of his episodes, and one of them was hunting buffalo. And he's down this river bottom, and there's a group of, I don't know, it was probably about 30 buffalo total, maybe more. And then I just sat there and I was looking, and I asked him, I go, when you look out and you're hunting buffalo, do you ever imagine what it used to be like, where they blanketed the landscape? And now it's like you see a little group here, and a single bull. He ended up shooting this one bull, was all by himself. And that was like, I read Stephen Ellis' book, American Buffalo.
About how the river, that's part of why the wetlands down in the Mississippi Delta are so lush, is because the river would actually clog with dead buffalo.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. It's like and you think about they were in Pennsylvania. I mean, they were on it, and he said there'd be swaths, like there'd just be these big roadways all of a sudden where these buffalo were going through the woods. And now, and then you see the pictures of and what was really sad is how he talked about the hide hunters. They weren't even hunting for meat, and they would just take the hide and they'd spend a summer and they would tan them and stuff and leave the carcasses. Then they found people who started making money off of picking the bones up to be crushed in it was like a cycle. And he said, like, some places, like the settlers would be coming across the country and the smell of the dead rotting buffaloes just would be so disgusting.
Yeah.
And
we have places here in Montana where there's hillsides where you can see, because they walk side by side, unlike cattle, which like to walk single file, like sand people, Star Wars reference. Anyway, they walk side by side. So up on the hills, you'll see these terraces. And a lot of people thought that, like, oh, those are old, native trails. They're not. It's where the buffalo, they would walk side by side for thousands of years. And so it's terraced the whole way up, all the way up this 1,000-foot ridge line. And they would just come across it and just pound it. Crazy conservation story out of here in Montana too. When Pittman Robertson dollars started hitting the ground, they wanted to start bringing back goats and bighorn sheep and others that were in need of it, just as much as the others. So this World War II veteran, and by veteran, I mean, he literally just got back from fighting in Germany. He's in his early 20s. And he went to go sign up. They said they needed people for wildlife capture. He's like, well, I live in the area. It's up in this area that's now the Bob Marshall Wilderness, which is one of the largest wilderness complexes in the U.S., certainly in the lower 48. You can go like 65 miles without touching a road, and you can easily miss a trail when you're going across it. But he went up in there into this by himself. It's the craziest thing. They didn't give him instructions. They just said, capture the goats, these mountain goats, which they all live above 8,000 feet with the exception of where they are in South Dakota. Capture these goats and then drop them off at this airstrip where they've got these repurposed, World War II cargo craft to haul them out, is what was supposed to happen. They gave him a budget for it. And so he goes in. He backpacks in with like a hatchet, a rifle, a fishing pole, and a bunch of rope, and by himself. He was supposed to use the money to pay other people to come and help him, but he's a strapping dude, and he just goes. So you have to go 2,500 feet of elevation gain straight up over 1.5 miles just to get up over the lip to get into where you're starting your hike. He gets in there. It takes about 1.5 days to get there for a really fit hiker. Starts building pens around the edge of this lake called Big Salmon Lake. And it's called that because the bull trout in there get so big you think that they're salmon. And he's eating fish and stuff, catching fish, warding off bears a bit, building these pens. And then he goes and sets up snares up on the edge of the cliffs, way, way up above him, still a couple thousand feet up higher. Ends up catching a couple goats, hobbles them with the snares. So it's one guy wrestling a goat down the mountain, mountain goat. And people think of mountain goats, they think these little fluff balls. They can be way bigger than a mule deer in size. They're huge. And those horns kill people. Like every couple of years, someone gets gored by one. So he's fighting these goats. He gets them down in the pen. One thing he was working on was building a Swiss Family Robinson style raft out of logs he had cut. He builds a raft, and he now rafts that little group of goats. He had like less than a half dozen, somewhere between 3 and 6 goats that he has blindfolded because he saw that at a rodeo one time and realized that might calm him down. He's got them tied to a raft and takes them now on a 20-mile whitewater adventure to where this airstrip is. It's not a World War II plane. It ends up being this little biplane. So they're cramming these goats into this little biplane. And that's where the goats that we have right outside of Bozeman originate from.
Originate
Did
from?
this for a couple years before the Fish and Game went along with them. And they're like, wait, you've been doing it how? And they finally gave him like proper rafts and stuff and said, no, that money was to hire a team. He's like, oh, I thought that was my payroll. But that was going on, right after World War II. 2 years ago, Olympic National Park, they're in the process of removing all their goats because of lots of reasons. There are politics involved. I won't get into it here. But they were looking to remove them. So the Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance, a conservation group based out of here in Montana, said, hey, let's help move these goats. We will come and take them to their native range. They weren't native on the Olympic Peninsula. They were moved there by hunters who, some really rich guys who could afford to move them over there so that they could hunt them, decimating some parts of the landscape and stuff, competing and whatnot. They want them gone. Well, North Cascades National Park needed goats. So Goat Alliance said, we'll come and help. So they use helicopters, they're netting them, they're going to move them. One of our business members who runs a guide service out of Pennsylvania, Ethan Demi, shows up. I think he just turned 30 recently. He had flown there. He thought he was going to show up for like filling out forms and stuff of where these goats are headed. And they go, who's got a CDL? And Ethan's like, he literally just showed up. It's the morning meeting. He doesn't know what's been going on. They're like, great, you'll drive the truck. It's like, what truck? It's a refrigerator truck that they have filled with mountain goats that are not too happy to be in a refrigerator truck. He ends up driving a refrigerated truck on a ferry across Puget Sound full of, goats, and then driving them across, the state to go be dropped off in their new habitat where they're now thriving just phenomenally in the North Cascades. So when you show up to give your time for conservation, who knows, what you're getting yourself into. Ethan's a waterfowl guide. He owns Refraction Guide Service. He does bow fishing and some waterfowl out of Pennsylvania. He'll be, I think right now he's probably guiding folks off of Long Island as well. But that day when he showed up, he thought he was just going to be helping fill out bioforms for blood samples, and he ended up taking goats on boats that day. So
goats on boats, surprise.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's a reflection time for all of us to, besides buying our tags, it's maybe some of us like myself need to give back. And I'm glad I know that, like, once I get my real estate license, because I'll be private, I'll be self-employed, that I can get involved as far as the donation of money goes. So that's very cool to know. I'm glad, because that's what I'll plan on doing. So all I have to do is go on your website under businesses and then sign up there. Is that how?
Yeah, under business certification. Yeah, and then for individuals, it is the honor system. Otherwise, we'd be looking at people's tax returns and stuff. We do kind of do a social media check, make sure we don't have someone acting in bad faith, But for individuals, it's free. You also get a 40% discount. Same with business members, 40% discount on our store. And one thing I would encourage folks to do is also go and look at our business members on there. They all gave, some of them way above and beyond in 2020. And they have been certified for giving back. We all have our favorite gear that we use for hunting, but only the brands that have been certified for it can say that they actually did. There's a lot of hunting brands out there that make a lot of great gear, and many of whom we're in talks with for eventually getting them certified. But these are the folks who have taken the initiative and earned the certification instead of just using conservation as a marketing term, which too often it is anymore. So take a look at there, and if you're looking for a guide service, there's certified guides out here in the West, in the East Coast, hell, over in Scotland. If you want to go hunt, up in the Highlands, we have a certified Scottish guide as well. There's all kinds of things. If you like wine, you can order from a 2% certified winery, soon to be 2% certified distillery. There's like 6 certified coffee companies. There's no reason for people who care about conservation to not be shopping 2% brands. And 2% gets no kickback. We don't get a kickback for advertising them, other than they pay dues for their certification for the use of our brand and help in advocating for the conservation work they do.
Okay. So how about give out your website, your social media, all that stuff where people
Yeah.
can get in touch with you.
So our website is fishandwildlife.org. You can also just Google 2% for conservation. We show up right away with a lot of easy hot links there on Google. And then on social media, it's just 2% for conservation, not the symbol, because the symbol breaks computers. But it's just 2% for conservation. Our logo is purple, so it's pretty easy to figure out if you found us correctly. And again, everything on our website is really easy to find. Anywhere you need, help finding places to give, that's in the committee directory. How to become a business or individual member, those are right there in our programs. And then you can see our entire business member list, as well as a map of where they're located, so that you can shop with ones that are near you as well.
Cool. Awesome, Jared. I'm glad we had this talk. I'm glad I learned more about it. So, and know what I can do once I get my licenses and stuff. So cool. I'm glad we had this talk. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
You got it, sir. Have a great weekend. And
You too.
Hey, take your meds and feel better, my friend.
Yeah, hoping for some. We're gonna find out if I upgraded from last year's 5-letter C word to a 6-letter C word with the blood work tonight. So we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.